Shwmae a chroeso I Sgwrs, podlediad Consortiwm Canolbarth y De. Yn y podlediad hwn byddwch chi'n clywed y trafodaethau diweddara am bob math o bethau addysg. Hello and welcome to Sgwrs, the Central South Consortium podcast. In this podcast we'll bring you the very latest discussions on all things education.
Hello and welcome to the Central South Consortium podcast. In 2021, in collaboration with schools and universities in the region, we created a publication called 10 Ways to Support Initial Teacher Education in Schools. This is the first episode in a series of 10, each exploring one of the 10 ways that schools can offer the right kind of environment where both student teachers and school can flourish. The title of this first podcast is Take the Lead in Supporting the Teachers of Tomorrow. My name is Sian Watkins and I would like to introduce you to Trevor Brown, who is head teacher at Stanwell School in Penarth. Hi, Trevor.
Good afternoon, Sian. Nice to see you.
Yes, lovely to see you again. So, Trevor, I know you have a very long history in ITE. You've been an ex-lecturer on initial teacher education programmes. You're currently peer inspector for ITE. Your school is taking the lead in ITE, and I know your previous school, where you were head teacher, also took the lead with ITE. So why is ITE on your list of priorities, especially when, let's be fair, schools have so many competing priorities to deal with?
Yes, I mean, my own sort of personal history goes back some way in terms of involvement with ITT. It goes back actually to when I was a classroom teacher and worked as a mentor and senior mentor, and it was something that I absolutely loved doing in school, and felt that in terms of my professional development it played a key part in not only sort of refining and developing my own classroom practice, but also helped me to develop as a school leader, working with and through other trainees in school. And I suppose having worked in the sector as well, it's something that I felt schools have a real duty to take a kind of key lead with, and have always felt that the schools that I've led should be right at the heart of that process, working in partnership with higher education to try and provide the best possible experience for trainees coming into the profession. So my own personal experience is closely aligned to initial teacher education. It's felt something that I felt very passionate about as a school leader. And you're quite right to say that there are competing demands and priorities for school leaders, but if we're not placing this right at the very heart of our culture and ethos in schools, then we're doing a disservice to future generations of teachers and students.
I really want to pick up what you said there about you being a key leader in ITE, and I mean there's no denying, is there, that there have been some major changes in ITE in Wales, with schools, and particularly lead schools like yourselves, having an equally accountable responsibility for ITE. In the past, partnerships really was perhaps, while we work together, while schools and universities work together, the responsibility mainly landed with the university, but that's not the case anymore. I mean, what does equal accountability or joint responsibility for IT mean to you?
I think, first of all, taking the sort of the latter part of that first, the joint responsibility, I think, right from the heart in terms of the direction of travel of ITT in Wales over the last few years, we've at the very heart of that has been this kind of idea of co-construction. And I think it's far easier to have that joint accountability where schools have felt far more ownership and responsibility around the design of course program and delivery of course programs. And I think that's been a really exciting part of what we've been doing in Wales, to kind of work in partnership with some of the expertise in HEIs and work to build something really interesting. So, for example, here as a lead school, we have our professional learning days, and we've constructed those with in conjunction with staff at the university, and we feel that provision is excellent because of that, and that we are able to cover everything that's really important for new entrants to the profession, from new curriculum through to action research, through to some very tangible hands-on operational stuff that practitioners have to get to grips with when they get into the classroom around behaviour management, etc. So I think that's been really exciting, and I think that means it's we feel because of that co-construction, we do feel it's absolutely right then that we are accountable for what happens. And I think certainly here in my school, we very much feel that responsibility and accountability alongside the higher education institution. So I think that's been a real positive. And I think that's shared certainly by the senior mentor, the mentors in school. They realise that their job was always important, and that they played an important part in the development of the professionals that they were working alongside. But now there is that extra sense of accountability, for example, with the inspectorate and so on.
So there's a lot of people who are very much involved with that, and that accountability obviously is very prominent. Have you had to include governors in that as well?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I think we've tried to involve all our stakeholders. I mean, we've made sure that initial teacher education is in our school development plan, and we've very much aligned that to some of the work that we've focused on around developing action research in school for our teachers, our own professional learning offer, and for that reason, our school development plan is fully supported by our governing body and approved by our governing body. So they're fully aware, for example, of Stanwell's role as a lead school in terms of initial teacher education. So absolutely, I mean, I think they're very aware of our role, and in the same way that they would challenge us on as critical friends on our performance or aspects of school life, that they would ask searching questions on teacher education around our involvement, progress of those students, employment of those students, and we have some on our governing body, and we have some representatives from higher education as well who know their stuff and do kind of challenge us and support us with that part of our work.
It's interesting you mentioned there about employment. I mean, is there something that schools can do to help make sure our student teachers are employment ready?
I think schools I've worked in have always tried to provide very practical advice and support to trainees around sort of letters of application, practicing interview technique, those sorts of things. And I remember as a lecturer as well, we'd often do sessions that those were supported by sessions at university as well. So I think schools are pretty adept at that, and I'd like to think we do a good job of that here.
And do you think all schools can support students in that way, whether they're lead schools or whether they are just schools who've got a lighter commitment to initial teacher education?
Yes, I think so. And I mean, you'd like to think rather than sort of just the kind of nuts and bolts of interviews and applications, that the programs that we've co-constructed here are actually preparing trainees for those, for the workplace anyway, that if we're looking at a kind of really holistic approach to their development, so that they're ready for the challenges of the curriculum for Wales, if they are aware of how that this is a profession with a practice and that they are required to be reflective practitioners, if they're aware of the importance of action research and educational research and informing practice, if they have had opportunities to blend theory and practice as part of their program in the university and in school, that they are going to be ready for the workplace. So by dint of giving them a good deal, and I think the increased consistency that exists now in terms of that provision has certainly helped that. So I think whatever your role, whether that's as a lead school, clinical practice school, or any involvement you've got with a trainee, I think you can certainly play a part in helping them in their next steps.
Okay, well, thanks. So just to finish us off then, Trevor, if you had sort of one thing that you wanted listeners to take from this podcast, what would that be?
Well, that's a good question. I think it would be that we've all got a responsibility as leaders and as teachers to place initial teacher education right at the forefront of what we do, that it should be integral to school life, that it should be, I'd like to think that it would be part of a school's development planning process, that wherever possible it can become something that can integrate fully into your culture and ethos, and can bring as many benefits to the school as it can to the trainee, and that's my vision for it here, and where I've seen it living and breathing in many schools, similarly it's had a really powerful impact.
Well, that's brilliant. Thanks ever so much, Trevor. Unfortunately, that's all the time we've got for this first podcast, but I really would like to thank you, Trevor, for your own vision. It really is inspiring to listen to. And to our listeners, please remember that this is the first in a series of 10. Please look for our forthcoming episodes. And if you want to read more, the publication 10 Ways to Support Initial Teacher Education in Schools is available on the Central South Consortium website.
Diolch am wrando ar y bennod hon o Sgwrs. Cofiwch ein dilyn ar Twitter a Facebook, tanysgrifio ein sianel YouTube, ymuno yn cymunedau ar ein gwefan a darllen ein bwletin ysgolion wythnosol am y newyddion diweddaraf. Thanks for listening to this episode of Sgwrs. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, join our online communities via our website, and read our weekly school bulletin for the latest news. Hwyl am y tro. Bye for now.